In episode 4, Roy was definitely not lying. While he started training the previous night, he also continues it early in the morning when he wakes up Jamie for a run. Ted had a little bit better of a wake up. He woke up with Sassy after the two had a nightcap, but as she's leaving, Ted asks her out on an actual date, and she says no. When Ted asks why, she says, "Ted, you're a mess." She's just simply more comfortable with the current arrangement, friends with benefits. Ted then has to get ready for work because it's a big week. They're playing West Ham, something that is consuming Rebecca's mind. She heads to KJPR to vent to Keely about the nice things that Rupert said about Richmond in the press. And while Keely is being a good friend and being supportive, she also has a business to run, and she's sending Shandy over to the pitch because Shandy is doing a new campaign for Banter. The man that you could be talking to on Banter might be a professional football player. It's going to involve all the single players, and when Rebecca hears that, she mentions all of them, but really focuses on Sam being single. She finds out, though, that Sam isn't on Banter anymore. Not that Rebecca cares about that sort of thing. Shandy heads out, and then Barbara comes in because she's looking for 2 tickets to the game on Saturday. Their big investor, Jack Danvers, is coming into town. Keely's so oblivious that she doesn't even know this guy's name, but she's willing to get him tickets. Rebecca takes care of that. Back over at the facility, the boys are trying to figure out how they're going to beat West Ham, and there's definitely some concern in the room that they just can't do it. When Ted finally interrupts, he gets the conversation on a more important matter. The fact that Sassy said that he was a mess. It ends up resulting in a meeting of the Diamond Dogs. Initially, Roy doesn't want to be in it, but he gets into it because Beard says, this has nothing to do with Sassy. This has to do with Nate. You're acting like everything's normal, like he didn't hurt you, but he did hurt you. Ted tries to tell him, look, this has nothing to do with Nate. I'm asking you if I'm a mess. And Higgins says, I just don't understand. I don't understand how you're not mad at Nate. No matter how much Ted doesn't want to talk about the issue, it's become clear that this is going to be the main topic of the Diamond Dogs meeting. The fact that Ted continues to act like Nate's actions didn't affect him at all. Roy jumps in when Ted says, Nate didn't hurt me. Roy yells, that's bullshit. While they were having this meeting, though, outside in the locker room, the players were discussing how they need to ignore the talking heads of the media. Zava especially says these people don't know what they're talking about. And Jamie agrees with him, saying, yeah, we just have to focus on what we need to do. Isaac gets up in support and says, yeah, you guys are right. And he goes to slap the Believe sign, only to reveal that the Believe sign has been torn in half. Up until this point, the players had no idea, and now they're wondering who the hell did it. Trent Krim, who watched this entire interaction, decides to go searching for some answers. Meanwhile, the guy who actually did tear the sign, Nate, is trying to turn his newfound celebrity status into a date. He goes to that restaurant that he tried to get a reservation at last year and kind of got turned down, but eventually turned it into a reservation. Yeah, he heads there. He kind of tries to hit on the hostess, but she doesn't really seem to care about him or his celebrity status or any of that. The owner knows who he is, and he comps the meal, but Nate still walks out of that place single. Nate heads back to the office, but he's not worried about Saturday's game. What he's really worried about is this is the first time he's going to see Ted since the whole blow-up. He tells Rupert that he feels like he owes Ted a little bit of an apology, but Rupert says no. You did what was best for you. What were you supposed to do? Hang around and support Ted for the rest of your life? You've done nothing wrong. You've earned this job. Nate asks Rupert, what am I supposed to say when I see him? And Rupert says you shake his hand, you say hello, you look him in the eye, and then you go out and beat him. Nate really, really appreciates this talk. Back at his former club, they're finding out, though, what Nate did. Trent Krim might have been a reporter, but now he's an investigative journalist who found the security camera footage. He calls Ted, Roy, Beard into a room and shows them that it was Nate who was the one who tore the sign down. Beard and Roy want to show the video to the team. They feel like it could motivate them, really fire them up. But Ted doesn't want to do that at all. He just tells them to go home. He's not going to use that tactic. For the team, it's ignorance is bliss. They've started Keely and Shandy's banter campaign. It includes Jamie, who Shandy seems to like quite a bit, and who Keely doesn't seem to be over. She starts talking about how Jamie used to be all about himself, but recently he's changed. And as she's talking, she's realizing what she's saying. Because up until this point, she knew it, but she had to say it out loud for her to actually realize it. Shandy, though, doesn't care about any of that. She just wants to know if it's okay if she tries to sleep with him. and Keely plays it off like it's okay. The next day is match day. Keely and Rebecca show up because they're going to be watching the game together, and Keely's really nervous because she's going to meet Jack for the first time. She wants to impress him. She heads into the bathroom, though, before she heads to the suite, and she realizes that it's that time of the month. Lucky for her, there's somebody in the stall next to her, so she decides to ask her, hey, do you have a tampon? And she starts making some comments that probably are a little too forward, a little too brash. She doesn't really think anything of it, though, until she gets out of the bathroom and meets Jack. And Jack isn't a guy, it's a woman. And Jack was the one who gave her the tampon in the bathroom. It's kind of embarrassing for Keely. Jack, though, seems to handle it well. She understands because, she's been through that kind of thing before. Doesn't really think anything of it. She just kind of wants to enjoy the game. But most of this game is going to be centered around the coaching battle between Ted and Nate. It's also going to be the first time these two see each other, and it's going to be a little bit awkward, especially for Nate. Even after Rupert's pep talk, when Ted gets in the same elevator as Nate, he tries to hide in the back and not be seen, but Ted sees him. Ted acts like nothing went down between the two, like he's excited to see Nate, and it seems like Nate gets pretty close to apologizing, but when the elevator doors open and Rupert's standing there, he can't bring himself to do it. They then have to get ready for the actual game. Even though they seem to have a pretty good interaction in the elevator, when Nate and Ted go out to the pitch, Ted walks up to Nate and shakes his hand and says, hey man, let's have fun out there. But Nate just gives him daggers. And Nate isn't the only one. So are Beard and Roy because they know what Nate did at this point. Unfortunately, though, it doesn't go down like that after one half. Jamie's form is still pretty poor. He misses a pretty easy goal, but they are getting good goaltending from their new goalie, Zorro. He got the confidence from Zava to go by his last name only, and it seems to be working until West Ham score. And then right before halftime, thanks to Nate the Great's tactical genius, they score again, and it's 2-0. Ted goes in to talk to the team, but he sees Rebecca, so he puts that on hold to go see what's up with her. And she's freaking out a little bit. This one really meant a lot to her. She doesn't want to lose it. So she tells Ted, I just want to tell you I believe in you, and I know I've been putting a lot of undue pressure on you, but forget all of that. Be yourself and have fun. Although she's not overly convincing with any of that. When Ted walks back into the locker room, the team is fired up. And that is because while Ted was out in the hallway talking to Rebecca, Beard and Roy decided to show them the video of Nate tearing up the sign. The Richmond team walk out of the tunnel for the second half, and they are ready to kill. All of them shooting death stares at Nate. But it actually works against them. They get yellow cards that turn into red cards. They play completely undisciplined, and they end up losing 4-1. At the end of the match, Ted goes to shake Nate's hand, but he just runs onto the pitch, completely blowing off his old boss. It also didn't go much better in the stands. Jack is really tough to read for Keely, but it didn't seem like she had that good of a time. She also overhears a conversation between Shandy and Keely when Shandy proudly announces that banter is trending, but it's not for a good reason. Shandy, without the consulting of Keely, decided to change one of the lines in the banter ad to say, want to hook up with a rich celebrity, although she didn't use the word hookup. This is a really embarrassing moment for Keely because it looks like she doesn't have control of her company. She pulls Shandy aside and says, you need to change this right away. This is not acceptable. But Shandy pushes back, saying, banter's going to love this. I've tripled their subscribers in an hour. Keely, though, reiterates, you need to change it back. And Shandy reluctantly agrees. As for Rebecca, she's milling about the suite level when she sees that Rupert hasn't changed his ways at all. He's sneaking off with his secretary. When she eventually does go to leave and she's going to get her car, she ends up running into Rupert and Bex. They're cordial, but Rebecca whispers into his ear, I saw you with your assistant. Your daughter deserves better, and so does Bex. Stop messing around. Down in the locker rooms, it's pretty catatonic after the match for Richmond. Beard and Roy just want to get yelled at by Ted, but he doesn't give them that. He just tells them to shake it off. There's a lot of football left. And they hate that. They'd rather be yelled at. In the other locker room, things are great. Nate tells the media that it was easier than he thought it would be. But they did notice that he snubbed Ted in the handshake. And they ask about it, and Nate didn't even realize he did it. He just tells them that he got caught up with the excitement. He is getting rewarded, though, for this big win. Nate does see Ted near the bus, and he's about to walk up to him and shake his hand, apologize, just talk to him, but Rupert's assistant comes down and says, Mr. Shelley, Mr. Mannion wants to meet you here in an hour, and it's a VIP pass for a club in London. When Nate shows up at that club an hour later, Rupert has a couple of ladies waiting for him, and they look a lot better than the hostess from that restaurant. Later that night, the losing coach, Ted Lasso, is not even thinking about the game. He's thinking about what's going on at home. He FaceTimes Michelle, and he tells her how he feels about the whole situation. He tells her that this whole situation pisses him off, and he's upset that they didn't get to talk about it earlier. He apologizes for saying it, but he also adds in, I'd feel bad if I didn't say it, because we have to raise this little boy together. They then say goodnight to each other, and he hangs up. Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel and subscribing to my Patreon. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. If you left a comment, I don't get back to you. I usually don't check the comments unless they're like a super comment. Also, if you don't see the next video up on the end screen, not to worry, it'll be up in a day or two.